Tim had Alex Jones back again with Michael Malice, and they kind of touched on some of these things, but they didn't get Tim had a bunch of questions, and I love that he's exploring this, and he's progressed quite a bit over the time that I've been following him, which is since Occupy Wall Street days when he really got his start. And he's entertaining more of these ideas that there is something else bigger going on and more at play. Because I think a lot of people have run into this wall of the Great Reset and thinking, no, that's not a real thing. And it's like, well, here's the documentation. Here's the World Economic Forum's blog posts about how like, oh, the future will be great. You won't own anything. And here's Klaus Schwab looking like he just stepped out of Star Trek episode.
Spaceship. Yo, that guy's crazy. What?
I know. It's
unbelievable.
It's bizarre. So now I think Tim's a little bit more open to hearing about these things, but it's difficult to pin Jones down to get answers to questions because he'll just follow these sidetracks that start up. So I think you had some answers to some of the questions that Tim threw out there.
Yeah. So, Alex, so if you haven't seen that show, I highly recommend it. There's great interactions, and Michael Malice, so it was Michael Malice, Alex Jones, and Tim Pool, and Luke Rudowski made a appearance as well. He was in the room. But anyway, so these guys, they're all talking, and Alex is kind of like, I am a gorilla, he's doing his whole thing, but he's like weaving in this crazy stuff that, he's certainly known to have talked about in terms of interdimensional beings, and they're elites are like getting IV drips of psychedelic drugs, and they're mapping out these like realms of existence, and they're the machine elves, and all this stuff. And I don't.
It says like these people do this in their free time. The richest of the rich, like the Rothschilds, they're sitting around
all occult stuff,
focusing on this and trying to unlock these codes that are in the books that are behind Pat.
Right. Yeah, it's true. It's all back there. I mean, not all of it, but like a lot.
A large chunk.
But yeah, and so the thing is with what they're doing, this is a side note before I progress, but the thing that they're doing, the reason that it's difficult, I imagine, for them, I mean, they might, you can make a deal with the demon, like good for you, but like what is that really getting you? You got a bigger car, you got more control at your company, you know what I mean? You got more wealth, like good for you. You jerk. Help all these people. All these people are like spiritually wandering in a wasteland. Like what the hell? Anyways, it's all focused on material stuff. So you're not the God that I'm talking about, this transcendent thing is love. There's a love vibe to it. So when you want to get more of it, you got to align yourself with with a love. And you can say, oh, well, they believe they're being loving because they think we're all stupid eaters. And so by calling the population, they're doing the right thing. Okay, yeah, fine. But no, you got to have like a guttural experience of love inside of you as you move through your day and move through your moments of life. And when you look at other people, when you deal with situations, that's what opens it up more than anything. You don't need any of these. You don't need any of this stuff. You don't need cards. You don't need books. You don't need to do none of that. Just love people, and the doors will open if that's what you want. But anyways, so they're talking about all this crazy stuff and how the elites are like obsessed with the cult stuff. And I'm sure they are, I don't doubt it at all, because the symbolism's all there. And one thing that Tim said, like maybe like an hour and 15 minutes in, he's like, Alex Jones was talking about, back in the day, they'd like sacrifice a kid and summon a demon would appear, and they'd ask, where's the buried treasure? Or like, how do I get rich? Or what, like stupid questions. And then Alex said, but now they progressed to better questions. And the new questions are, well, like, how do you build the ultimate weapon? He talked about the atomic bomb and made that connection. And Tim's very astute question in response to that was, well, how do these things know? Like, all right, let's just assume that there's these things. Well, how the heck do they know this stuff?
Yeah, these interdimensional entities that they're contacting. How do they have this secret knowledge to how to build the best rocket ships or atomic bombs?
Right. And that's a valid question. It's kind of like, it is kind of weird. You're like, why would a demon know about rocket ships? This doesn't make any sense to me. And like, I get that, but it's more nuanced than that, right? So first of all, the terrain. So everything you can do that to is inside a tiny little like microscopic slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's just the teeniest little slice of it. And we assume, or most people assume, that there's a lot of reasons not to assume this, but most people assume that this is where the conscious life exists, in this slice. And all the other stuff is just like oceans of different vibes. But we don't have the antenna, we don't have the sensors, right, most of the time, to perceive the other lives that exist in all these other slices of reality. So
Right. And you can think about it like we're unable to perceive sound waves or light waves for that matter.
Right.
So there's plenty of stuff
moving.
going on around us that we take advantage of that we don't acknowledge travels throughout the ether around us.
That's right.
But we know that it exists because we harness it somehow.
That's right. There's cosmic radiation and microwaves and infrared, and there's 35 radio stations or like 80 radio stations, and there's all the ham radio guys. So all that's in between my hands right now. Y'all can't see it. I can't see it. Somebody out there can see it, and God help them. Their life must be awful if you can see all that stuff. But perceive different vibrations. But it's an evolutionary mechanism that we can't see it. That's Alex Jones mentioned that too. He said like it's a mechanism to protect us, because imagine how crazy you'd be if everywhere you looked you saw all this stuff. And it's true. It's enough to really give you a bad day. So, but anyways, so you're in this ocean of layers, and they're all superimposed. It's a very non-linear way to think, right? We're like, oh, well, if there's layers, it's like a cake, and there's one, and then there's another. No. It's all in the same spot. And it's not layers of like depth and linear dimension. It's layers of density that are overlaid. And that overlaid soup of dimensionality, it apparently turns out, according to these modern science guys who do all this stuff, but also if you go back thousands of years, they like all this stuff is already done. They're reinventing the wheel, all these new guys, because you can just go back and it's right there. It's clear. It's very clear as day that they're describing how this is set up and how it's built. The only difference is they didn't have the vocabulary of technology to be able to put it in that framework. So they put it in a mystical vocabulary of words we don't recognize. But now I could say, 7-layer operating system is a metaphor for existence, and we're in the application, quote unquote, layer, and like the network switching layer is the astral light, and the astral light is this sort of like copy of this place, but it's made out of just pure like less dense energy. And then below that, there's the binary code of like darkness and light that's, flickering back and forth from this unknown source. So all this stuff, you could go on and make the perfect metaphor, but they didn't have that vocabulary. So they used other systems to describe this. And the Kabbalistic tree of life, tarot, astrology, the alphabets, that technology of spoken word and written word, especially Hebrew, which is closer to like Sumerian. So like, the Proto-Semitic languages all have a different quality to them in what they represent. Whatever. All these things are like different systems of technology that human beings were able to utilize to describe this ocean of density, vibrations, whatever it is, and not only describe it, but give us a means to make our awareness expand to encompass it also. And that's really what they're trying to do. So when it comes to tarot, and when it comes to the idea of chakras, or like I know Christians who like I'll talk about chakras and they're like, oh, I don't talk about chakras, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, you drive a car, you don't talk about an engine. Like, what the hell, what are you talking about? Like, there's nothing negative about this whatsoever. Like, I'm sorry that you have centers of energy that animate your body. Like, sorry, bro, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's not my fault. Don't shoot the messenger. Like, this is what you are. I don't know what to tell you. You don't want to know about it because you think it's like somehow evil. Well, that's evil. You got something in your brain that's making you think that. Just like, it's crap.
It's okay. I think we're all adults here.
Yeah. I told myself I wouldn't curse. I'm trying to curse less. So I love to curse.
No, direct your curses at those who deserve curses. Yeah. Thank you. It was away from
no
me.
Curses. No curses. That's the thing. It always folds back on you anyways. That's why you do love, and you be for what you're for, and you let the negative stuff. I mean, right. So anyways,
so these guys are accessing these other densities, as you've been calling them.
Yeah.
And encountering what lives. I mean, I use that term. Right. What exists in these other realms? So
there's three. So I wrote this down before these are my notes for today. I was like, this is what we have to talk about, or what I want to talk about. So there's three qualities to something that you can think of as like an entity. So in my world, it's got to have some type of bounded limitation that like makes it, concrete, like not concrete, like a physical, like material thing, but it's got to have a boundary to it. It's got to have some type of awareness, self-awareness, awareness. So it can be aware of certain things. And this is like, this could be true of a cell as much as a human, because there's some type of awareness in a cell. A red blood cell knows to go towards glucose and put, you know what I mean? So there's an awareness there. And then it also has to have agency and a means to actualize that agency. So these three qualities, I think of as something that makes an entity an entity. So I'm an entity, you're an entity, and there can be entities that have a body, quote unquote, but it's not physical, right? It's in another dimension. It's made out of other stuff than we are. And so the idea is that in the different layers of this cake of reality, or this ocean of reality, the different kind of forces are more manifest. They're more actualized. Forces you can think of like physics, like electromagnetic or gravitation or whatever. There's different kinds of forces. So there's other kinds of forces too. And they're almost like mental forces. So some people say the universe is mental. And what that means is that it's an emanation from a source. It's rippling out from somewhere, rippling in from somewhere, whatever. So in these different layers, the awareness that these things have, whatever they are, and there's all different kinds of them too, but the awareness that they have is much more advanced and is of a much more fundamental quality to reality. So if you are able to be in touch with something like this, or something, and I don't do that, and I don't advocate that, and there's really no need to do any of that. This is what these guys are up to. But this is how it works: is they get in there and they understand like chemistry and atomic physics and all this stuff, because it's part of the fabric of their existence. They're operating in a level of energy, if you will, where these kinds of principles are like the building bone of their existence.